Honorable Minister of Education, Culture, Sport and Youth, heads of the European Parliament and head of European Commission's representation in Cyprus, ambassadors of Germany, France and Holland, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is with a great pleasure that we welcome you to today's conference, which has at its center young people in the context of the future of Europe. As you know very well, this conference, it's a unique opportunity for European citizens to participate actively in the shaping of priorities of the European Union for tomorrow, and in order to shape their opinions, their questions with regard to the future of Europe. And in the digital platform, which is dedicated to this conference, we see themes like the climate change, environment, health, stronger economy, work, and the values and rights of the state, of the rule of law, of digital transformation, European democracy, migration, education, culture, youth, and sports, and of course, unity. And if somebody wishes to table another idea which is not included in the previous 9 titles, so this is an open, creative procedure, and everybody, all citizens, can participate actively. And this is, of course, the aim of this student dialogue, in order to hear our concerns for our common European future. And your opinion today will shape your daily life for tomorrow in our united European home. Here from the Lyceum of Dasoupolis, we have 40 students, representatives of 18 lyceums and technical schools from all over Cyprus, which participate in the program. The EPAS, welcome against, but the students or the pupils from Paphos are not here present, but they can follow us on YouTube from Public Information Office. The students will have the opportunity to table their opinions and develop their stances via a discussion, a dialogue with the Minister of Education, Mr. Prodromos, the head of the European Parliament in Cyprus, Mr. Andreas Ketis, the head of the European Commission's representation in Cyprus, Mrs. Mirto Zambarta, and as well as the ambassadors of France, Ms. Elke Merckx-Javalta, the France ambassador, Mrs. Salina Grene-Catalano, and German ambassador, Mrs. Anke Schlim. Unfortunately, the acting Secretary General of European Affairs was not able to be here with us today, and now we will watch a video, and then I will give the floor to the Minister of Education.
The world is changing fast. How should the European Union evolve to face new challenges? What would strengthen its democracy and make it fit for the coming decades? What about the economy, the environment, our health? Your views count. The European Parliament has laid the foundations of the Conference on the Future of Europe alongside the European Commission and EU countries.
Abbiamo l'opportunità di riscoprire l'anima del progetto europeo e farla vivere nella contemporaneità. Invitiamo quindi tutti i cittadini europei a partecipare alla conferenza e a costruire l'Europa di domani affinché diventi davvero la loro Europa.
The conference, which was delayed by the pandemic, will begin soon. At the heart of the conference will be you, Europe's citizens and civil society representing your interests, on the ground at local, regional, national and European levels. People will be able to debate, discuss and share ideas in citizen panels. While anyone can participate, young people especially are encouraged to give their feedback through digital platforms and events, such as the European Youth Event in Strasbourg. The conference will be chaired by the presidents of the European Parliament, the Council and the Commission. When the conference reports its conclusions in spring 2022, Parliament will use the findings to push for an EU which has the priorities of Europeans at its heart and is ready to address their concerns.
Now I'll give the floor to the Minister of Education, Culture, Sport and Youth, Mr. Prodromos. for his brief address.
Εξοχότατες πρέσβυρες της
Honorable ambassadors of Mrs. Elke Mersk-Schaffield, Archbishop of Germany, and France, Mrs. Alina Grenade-Gatalo, dear head of the European Parliament Office in Cyprus, dear head of the European Commission's representation in Cyprus, Mrs. Mirtoza Marta, dear teachers, dear young students. And it is indeed with a great pleasure that I'm here today with you at this student discussion about the future of Europe. And in United Europe, which debates about its future through a conference on the future of Europe, it's very important, and it is of topical importance to introduce the approach, the vision, and the thoughts and expectations of our youth, because young people are the future of us, and you, young people, you are the future of Europe as well. And this conference on the future of Europe coincides this year, that is 2022, as the European Youth Year. Dear friends, it is true that for many decades, over half a century, throughout the course of the European integration, the European Union very often finds itself at a crossroads. That is to say, decisions should be taken for the course to follow and also for the direction of the European Union. That is why we are called upon today to decide which Europe we want and how we want a united Europe. And I'm very happy to note that here in Cyprus, to the question, how much Europe do we want? We want always more Europe, despite the crisis during 2012 and 2013 and the hard financial times that we've had. The Cypriot citizens believe in Europe and they look forward to transformation and to European integration. And today, with the young people of Cyprus, we give you the floor to shape your ideas about the future. And I would like to note again that the most important thing is to connect the European citizens with the European Union. That is to say, to overcome the impression, the idea that the European Union is a remote, bureaucratic or technocratic affair. And that is why we want to give the opportunity to the young people of Cyprus to express yourselves and to participate. And together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and together with the representation officers of the European Commission and the European Parliament in Cyprus, as well as the representatives of three very important partners, that is to say the Germany, France, and Holland, and France, who has the presidency this year of the European Council. We wish to open the door to young people and to listen to the fresh ideas of young people. And as a ministry in charge of issues of youth, culture, from the beginning, we've looked at this conference for a new opportunity. And we believe that the encouragement of participation and actively citizenship is the cornerstone of educational process, which has to be supported at all levels, mainly now, where the citizens of Europe have been affected seriously by the unprecedented pandemic, and at the same time, the institutions, the mechanisms of the European Union, they look very remote. That is why we need immediately to have initiatives in order to reinforce the transparency, consultation, and participation. Dear young people, as a ministry, we have the responsibility for the shaping of a policy for youth in our country. We have begun policies and actions to the benefit of young generation of youth, and we are looking for active implementation, for active participation of young people, and in collaboration with the Cyprus Youth Board, we have promoted the implementation of the National Strategy for Youth, that is to say 2017 to 22, and then it will begin a new period after 2022, and this means permanent consultation with young people, and through this we can see the freshness, let's say, of new ideas, and at the same time we have reforms in the education of Cyprus, which aim at reinforcing quality and effectiveness of education at all levels, thus putting the growth and development of active citizenship at the center. And I have to note as well that important reforms in education and an amount which approaches 100 million go through the large program of the EU for resilience, recovery and resilience. And the ministry support the coordinator for the European youth, the commissioner for the citizen, Mr. Khtizdonas, in implementation of actions which give the visibility to increase visibility and also to give qualitative opportunities to our youth. Our debate discussion today will focus on three main topics which concern the EU. And first, the values and rights, the rule of law, safety, European democracy, second, migration, and third, the European Union and the world. And now I will give you the floor, and I would like to congratulate all those who worked, during this time, the educators, students, in indeed very difficult conditions because of the pandemic, and for the Lyceum, now they have their exams. And I would also like to thank the Lyceum of Dasoupolis for receiving us here, and of course we will hear with great interest your opinions and also your questions, and the conclusions will be sent, or will be addressed through the platforms, digital platform, to the institutions of the European Union, and of course we are going to use them also here in Cyprus at the local level. Thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε, κύριε.
And we thank you, Minister, on behalf of the Acting Secretary of General of European Affairs of the Cyprus Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Sambar Galtera. Mrs. Maria Statioti will read her speech.
Καλημέρα.
Good morning to you all, dear participants, dear children. It is with a great pleasure that I address this conference in the context of the future of Europe. I express my thanks to all the co-organizers and also the embassies of Holland, France, and Germany for their precious contribution to this event, as well as their participation yesterday in the preparatory meetings in the various schools. I would also like to express my thanks to you, to the students of Cyprus, who, despite their other obligations, dedicated time to participate in this debate, and this is a pan-European effort which began with a common vision, that is to say Europe should approach its citizens, have a vision about its future, and also this conference on the future of Europe resulted from long discussions between institutions and bodies of the European Union. And we've realized that there was a huge gap between the decision-making centers and citizens, the absence of trust and active participation of the citizens. In these times of extended crisis and sentiments, feelings against Europe, the need has resulted to shape a common future, and the EU it's important for the EU to consult with its citizens prior to the decision-taking on topics which affect them. And the initial idea of the French President Macron was developed in a proposal which was submitted by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. And youth, of course, it is at the center of this conference, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs supports the initiatives of youth. Young people, that is to say, you have been affected by the pandemic more than everybody else, and that is why it is imperative for the European Union to provide to you a podium for express and have participation opportunities in this decision-making process. Therefore, we pay great importance to the role played by the education at our schools, both in informing on special topics which concern the EU, as well as the cultivation of the European identity. So this study with regard to the values, rights, the rule of law, security, European democracy, migration and the role of the EU, as well as the role of the European Union in the world, are decisive for understanding the fundamental topics and challenges. And I would like to invite you today to take the floor and to table your ideas and contribute to the edification of Europe of tomorrow. The debate which will follow will be a unique opportunity to to express themselves, and also we, the young people in Cyprus, to discuss the positive or other questions. And as you know, the conclusions of this conference, which will be taking into account for the drafting of a report of the European Council, are expected for spring 2022. Therefore, you have to describe your vision in relation to the world in which you wish to live. Dear friends, I hope that today, by expressing your concerns and opinions on topical issues, which will, at the end, you will have a proposal and on the digital platform of the conference, and also in the following meetings of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And hope that you will have an interesting discussion. I would like to thank you, Philippa Katsera, the Acting Secretary General of European Affairs. Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστούμε.
We thank you. Now I give the floor to the head of the European Commission's representation to Cyprus, Mrs. Mishto Zambarta.
Καλημέρα και από μένα.
Good morning to you all. I'm very happy to be here today amongst our new generation, and I'm very pleased to see that the Conference on the Future of Europe is the opportunity to begin a dialogue between people of different background and different age as well. The Conference on the Future of Europe is a unique opportunity for European citizens, and especially young people like you, to express your vision for Europe and what you would like to see happen, change, stop, to express your concerns, fears, ideas about how Europe should be. Often, my team of the European Commission and myself think about our actions and what kind of events we could do in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And with my presence here today, I think events like these express the whole idea of the conference, because the idea of this conference is not to monopolize the podium from the few and from politicians, but to discuss with you and to listen to your opinions and ideas on extremely important issues. We do recognize that there is a feeling that Europe is something complex and distant. However, Europe is not only Brussels. Europe is every citizen, from the northern part of Finland to the eastern part of Cyprus. And this is exactly what unites us, the participation of every European citizen and the values upon which EU is founded. That is to say, the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. But in order for fundamental rights to continue to be not to be challenged, we need to have a collective effort and a continuous dialogue, and the younger generation must be the main actor and guardian of this process. And together with dialogue and your fresh ideas, we can achieve a better Europe, because we can do better together, and this has been proven if we think that during the pandemic we have achieved what no EU member state could have done alone. In the same spirit, we could face other important issues as well, such as migration, an issue that affects the Cypriot society to a great extent, and you could also envision the Europe we want in the world, from trade and international partnerships to foreign security and defense policy. And now it is time to have your say. We want to hear your opinion. We want to hear from you. It is not enough to hear from citizens every 5 years during the European elections, but we need to interact in a more deliberate and participatory way in order to shape our policies. And the conference is not just a policy of the European Union, but it is a need. a need both of the European Commission to prepare its next policies, and above all, a need for the older generations to come closer and listen to young people. At this moment, I'm speaking not only as a representative of the European Commission in Cyprus, but mainly as a mother, as a parent, because what can give you a great sense of fulfillment than to see the world being shaped through the eyes of your children, through the eyes of the younger generation. And I would like to thank you for your attention and looking forward to the upcoming discussion. Thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ambarta. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the debate that will have as a topic the values and rights, rule of law, security, migration, and the role of the EU. There were preparatory conferences that were broadcasted from these 18 schools with the work done with the ambassadors of the Netherlands, Germany, and France, whom we thank very much. And the results, of course, of all the debates will be uploaded on the digital platform of the conference. The future of Europe is our business. The digital platform gives us the opportunity to express our suggestions, concerns on the issues that concern us. The video is subtitled in English.
Στην πλατφόρμα για μια πανευρωπαϊκή συζήτηση σε όλα τα επίπεδα. Μπορούμε ακόμα να παρακολουθήσουμε εκδηλώσεις στην Κύπρο και σε όλη την Ευρώπη, από όπου και αν βρισκόμαστε, ή να διοργανώσουμε τη δική μας.
We can attend events wherever we are or organize our own event. The European Parliament, the Commission will listen to us and they will pay attention to our proposals that we'll submit by spring 22. So go to the website and make your voice heard. So on this topic, values and rights, rule of law, security, democracy, we had the Pancyprian Gymnasium, who were the organizers, Forum, Olympian, Martyr Kyprianos of Strovolos, the Lyceum of Soleas, the Lyceum we're at right now, the Dasoupolis and Idalion. And then in this topic, we had the involvement of French Ambassador Grené Catalano. You have the floor.
As you know, since the 1st of January, France is holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Our motto is recovery, strength, and sense of belonging. So it reflects the will to induce a successful recovery after the COVID crisis and to think about a new economic model for the future, to defend and promote our values and our interest on the international stage, and to build a sense of belonging to our common European family. So that is the third point that matters today. And this is the reason why the French government has made the participation of French citizens to the Conference on the Future of Europe a priority. So we organized 18 regional conferences last year in France, which gather around 750 randomly chosen selected citizens in total. And the thesis of these 18 panels was presented at a national conference which involved almost 100 volunteer citizens. And in order to highlight the views of the young people ahead of the European Year of Youth, because in 2022 it's the European Year of Youth, we have decided to launch an online consultation entitled, in French, Parole aux jeunes. It was organized by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and more than 50,000 young French people aged 15 to 35 were able to express their views, their ideas and priorities for the Europe of 2035. The 5 main changes hoped for by French citizens for Europe in 2035 are: develop energy sobriety, strengthening the EU's common defense and security, fostering collective economic performance through an autonomous industry, establish a multi-level citizen power, and I will give you 2 examples to illustrate this fourth measure. They would like to include the citizens' power in the European treaties. Don't know if it's feasible, but at least it's a proposal. Or to create a label certifying that laws have been subject to citizen consultation. The 5th change hoped for is to move towards a federation of European states with strong competencies in areas of common interest. Again, I would like to give you 1 example of the measures that were suggested. It's to elect the president of the European Commission by the universal suffrage. I don't know if my colleague from the Commission could agree on that. And the creation of ministries of Europe within the member states. So those are concrete measures that were suggested. For the French young people, the main priorities were the fight against climate change, the relocation of production in Europe, the revitalization of European democracy, and the strengthening of EU's weight on the international scene. So the conclusions of this exercise, of our exercise in France, are very similar to what I heard yesterday discussing with young Cypriots on the matter of democracy, rule of law, and European values. As President Macron explained in front of the European Parliament on January the 19th, the conclusions of the conference of the future of Europe, which will be known in May probably, there should be an opportunity to rethink and rebuild our European institutions. And taking the citizen suggestions into account, we should collectively work to build a more efficient Europe, a Europe closer to its citizens, more democratic and more human. And now I will give the floor to the students with whom I discussed yesterday, because I think that they have concrete suggestions and concrete questions also for you, Minister, as a matter of concerning the European values, rights, democracy. Thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Με ιδιαίτερο ενδιαφέρον.
Thank you for that. We will wait with great interest to listen to the conclusions of the team. We will hear a spokesperson for the team will be Kyriaki Christodoulidou. It's in English.
Share the values and ideas among its member states. However, no one can question the fact that each European member state carries its own history and culture that create norms and values embedded in the society's DNA. As proclaimed in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, values like human dignity, equality, freedom, solidarity, justice, and citizenship shape the 6 pillars and core values supported and advocated by the EU. Although the achievements that have been marked by the EU thus far are remarkable, there is still fertile ground for improvement. Let us begin with the key factor that undeniably has the power to shape mindsets and people's future: education. Education is our tool to implement and sustain European values. As students, we feel that such crucial discussions and opportunities should be a more substantial part of our school curriculum throughout the European Union. For instance, we suggest the creation of a module at all levels of education where European values will be thoroughly discussed, students will be informed and stay updated on EU strategies to tackle complex social issues, leading to uneducated youth and European critical thinkers. These lectures will be delivered by experts such as sociologists with a background in European studies and history. They will be assigned by each member state's government after successfully completing their training and a teaching course adjusted accordingly to all levels of education. Embedding the EU in our schools will give us all a more solid sense of belonging. As far as the rule of law is concerned, by definition, it is a tool that supports the equality of all citizens before the law. However, some fundamental rights are violated, such as the right for fair working conditions. Do you not find disturbing the fact that certain member states have not set a minimum wage that would allow citizens to live decently yet? In Cyprus, for example, minimum wage only applies in certain professions. Therefore, the EU should make mandatory the implementation of minimum wage that would reflect the living wage of each member state. This will safeguard that every European citizen lives with dignity. Last but not least, the EU has established numerous strategies like the Anti-Racism Action Plan, the Gender Equality Strategy, and the LGBTIQ+ Equality Strategy. Nevertheless, not all member states have the same societal maturity to adopt these strategies and implement them correctly. A country like Cyprus that has been an independent democratic nation only for 62 years and whose territorial integrity is constantly pestered cannot progress the way a country like France can, that has been independent for 230 years. Despite this, there must be ways that these strategies can be implemented so that they are actually efficient and do not just take the form of idealistic views for the future. Let us all have access to such events. Let us all have a voice that is heard and taken into consideration. Only then we will strengthen our confidence as European citizens. Thank you.
Κυριακή, σε ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Σε ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Thank you, Kyriaki, for all these important things that you have told us. The conclusions came out of the team and the schools that you have worked with. Before I ask other students for their views, if there are any views, I will give the floor to you, Minister. We heard what a student had to say about education. You might want to comment. I must say that these are crucial points that were touched upon, and they touch upon the substance of things. The suggestion, the proposal to include this in the curriculum is very interesting. I would say, however, that we need to combine it with an approach where all our subjects taught will somehow go through Europe. The issue of the rule of law, about working conditions and minimum wage. You know that we have started the discussion here in Cyprus for a minimum salary in all areas of employment. But let me say that also of crucial importance is something that is developing in Europe now and has helped Cyprus for these 17 years that we are members. It has helped us speed up reforms concerning social protection, the social welfare state, and even through a crisis, we were able to do well in these respects. Now, the safety network for low-income groups is undoubtedly the minimum salary or minimum income. Now, with regard to the rights of citizens and combating discrimination, be they racial or rooted in society and pertain to gender and so forth. These are issues that are on the forefront nowadays, and I see that you place great importance on them. It's natural that we had to face various dilemmas in order to progress on the way to implement fully the rule of law. Because I would say that even outside of the EU, which operates beneficially for all its members by voting, by combining, bringing experience together, setting common goals, a few decades ago, these issues were not on the table at all. You are right that we now have to speed up the process, therefore, and go faster to catch up. Cyprus is a young republic, as you have said. But let's not forget that the European Union, common action and setting common measures and common policies. We have the directives incorporated in some. We have also the orientations and so forth, so that the younger republics and also countries with a different DNA, as you said, we've been independent for 62 years, but not entirely free. So, and we have a tradition that goes back thousands of years. So we can use the wisdom of our people, the experience of our people, and also set the target higher, as you have suggested, because we need to conquer what we owe the citizens to conquer, all their rights, a right to a good life for everybody. So everything is taken on board. I would like to say that the issues outlined by the students really do set higher goals, and we should listen to them. Now, if there are any comments or questions from anybody else? Mrs. Zambarta. Just a comment. The minimum salary is discussed in the EU. There's a trilogy, the Council, the Commission, and are discussing this now, that it might become a law. And the European Parliament, Mr. Getis, has done a lot of work. Yes, Mr. is right. I want to make a small observation on the discussion to introduce into schools in the member states a lesson for the values, the history of the EU. For many years in the European Parliament, MEPs are pushing for this, because that would become the nucleus to build the European citizenship, because each one of us have a double citizenship. We are Cypriot citizens and also European citizens, which gives us the advantages and the rights of what's going on in Europe. So obviously, young people, you need to be participants, to know your rights, to know your obligations, because you are the future of Europe. And in the context of this conference, your contribution is paramount. So the history of the EU is still developing. We are building Europe. Now, the education, the curriculums in education are the competency of the ministers of education of the member states. The EU has competence in projects like Erasmus and other such. Your contribution is of exceptional importance. Your idea is very good, and it could be submitted on the platform. And that is how we can exert pressure on the national governments in that direction. I think the example of Germany and France in reviewing history textbooks that took out all hate speech, hate rhetoric, and are the nucleus of the unifying course of Europe, are an example that is worth looking at, to have textbooks that will cultivate our values. Now we go on to questions or comments, if you have any.
Technical School of Nicosia. So I would like to appoint a question. It is clear that countries with more economic power are treated differently in Europe, and their issues seem to have more gravity than those of financial weaker countries. What does the EU plan to do so that every country is treated in the same way and their problems are equally considered and tackled? Thank you.
Λοιπόν, παρακαλώ, σας ακούμε.
Πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ερώτηση.
That's a very interesting question. And it is the center and the value of the European edifice. The fact that so many countries have come together in a, I wouldn't say, call it a federation, that was the goal at certain moments in time, but they come together in very close cooperation. They are a unit, and it's very well known that in many subjects the European councils have to decide unanimously, so the decision of the member states have equal weight. It's something that we don't see outside of the EU. There's the United Nations organization, for example, where each country has one vote, but the decisions there don't have the same implementation scope that the EU decisions have. It is, allow me the term, an experiment, a noble ambition to set common goals, common standards, common specifications, irrespective of power and size and wealth. Now there are some thoughts about reviewing the voting rights and so forth. But an issue also has been said about the presence of the EU as a whole in today's world. And I suspect that as Europeans, we don't have the weight in international developments that we should have. You realize what happens when some stronger states, be they with a larger population or more resources or more wealthy or it's not just on economic terms, but stronger and larger in other ways, could impact developments. But Europe counts and must count. But the proposals of the French presidency that we hear now for a direct election of the presidency of the Commission, of the Council, you realize, of the Commission, yes, says the speaker, we will overcome the difficulty that some countries may have more of a say.
To correct, it's not a proposal by the French Republic. It's a proposal made by French citizens in the framework of this consultation of citizens. So I don't know if it's feasible. It's not our official proposal. It's a citizens' proposal. But I think you have a question, maybe, no?
Greetings, everybody. My name is Orestis Hagistilianou from Olympian High School. And as you've all said, you aim for a modernized and futuristic Europe. I cannot see how this can be achieved when members like us have not yet legalized or solved common problems like LGBT marriage, LGBT rights, or a woman's right for abortion. When I discussed this with the French ambassador yesterday, she told me that this cannot be achieved in a day, and I completely agree. But she also told me that we cannot demand without suggesting possible solutions. So I have some things to suggest. First of all, just like my fellow student said, like our educational system should include ways and subjects regarding these matters to help soften and help our people develop to a higher level of understanding. I know we cannot push these things, we cannot force these things, but we can push them just like other things have been pushed, such as the vaccination.
Επίκαιρο παράδειγμα, λοιπόν.
Yes, a very topical example.
So we come to the end of our first session. Yes, Ms. Getty, another remark with regard to what Marius said, as you say, inequality between the member states. I would underline that in the EU, all the member states are equal. Evidently, the population size, let's say, of every country, yes, plays a role, because it's a different number of votes from Germany, which is the largest country, member state of Europe, compared to Malta. So 6 MEPs, 96 Germany, which is the largest in population. So Cyprus should have 1.2, MEPs if it was proportionally, democratically according to our population. It means that we are overrepresented over 4 times. But at the same time, 2 weeks ago, before the European Parliament, we elected an MEP, Roberta Metsola, from the smallest European member states of the EU, which is Malta. So this shows that, she's the youngest, let's say. Even if you come from the weakest or the smallest country, member of the EU, you can have important positions. And I believe that you are affected by false news, which give a different, idea of the EU. But anyway, the size, yes, plays a role, and it is, of course, natural. I would like to add to that the differentiation which exists within the societies of each member state with regard to social rights, human rights, social rights, it's one thing. And it is a given reality. The European Union and the continuing encounter or the continued dialogue gives the opportunity to every country to be more open and make steps forward. In Cyprus, for example, this is very recent. It has been proposed by the government, approved and enacted by the parliament, for example, the marriage agreement. And this is something which before, 20 or 10 years ago was something futuristic, out of reality. So there is this dialogue and also on axes and rules which cannot be legitimized at the European level. But however, we benefit from the fact that we are open societies and we look in Europe what is happening in other countries and what we could adopt and how we could make steps forward. It's very right, as you said. During the debate, it was noted that social time and the times, let's say, of attitude is different from the calendar time, let's say. But you, as young people, 16, 17, 18 years old, you can have these concerns. And as the previous speakers and Mrs. Kanari said, I will ask of you to continue to exert pressure on the state, on the politicians, and on the government, but also on the society. And this is where I would like to reiterate that more than a specific, let's say, a lesson in the curriculum, of course it is open, the first suggestion, these elements of citizenship, of a modern society should be part of our curriculum, and also the opportunity to be able and have a dialogue within each school, to put questions, to receive answers to your questions. And I believe that you have these opportunities. It suffices to have a good school, qualitative school, which promotes dialogue and which sets aside other, unfortunately, sad social phenomenon that we often have in our schools. So very briefly, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Zambarta. Yes, the right against discrimination is a fundamental right which is protected by the European Union. It's a part of the Charter of Human Rights of the EU. So things will not change tomorrow, but yes, you have to pressurize in order for things to change. The society cannot change from exogenous pressures. The society can change from inside. So yes, it is up to you. It's going to be hard, but you have to accept this pressure. Microphone, please. Yes, I agree fully. And you are part of the society, yes, and you have the responsibility to do something. And we, as parents, as well, we have to let our children to exert pressure on us. So the outcomes of this conference on the future of Europe are expected with great interest. And yes, they will exert pressure at the same time towards change. And anyway, thanks to your dialogue or your society, how we want our future, the future of Europe. However, I do not want to take time from the other groups, so we have to now watch the second video.
Προτείνω στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση να επενδύσει περισσότερα χρήματα σε ό,τι αφορά
In the storage of energy from renewable sources and the climate crisis is not just a phenomenon for scientists. It is also a crisis of human rights, the rule of law, and social justice. The European Union must therefore identify the legal gap that exists in the protection of the displaced and ensure the safety of these groups and individuals. To improve health, I would like to see the introduction of sex education to increase the awareness and acceptance of the public. I would like to see equal employment opportunities for everyone. More emphasis on transitioning to green economy and green finance. We want to leave our own mark. We want a Europe with more opportunities for younger people. So our following session is migration, and in this discussion, the Lyceum Colossian, the coordinator of this of Group B, Heritage Private School, Gymnasium of Agros, Lyceum of Agaphylaxis, and Lyceum Inopetras, and together with the students in this preparatory meeting, present was the Ambassador of Germany, Mrs. Anke, Schlim, and Ambassador, you have the floor.
It is with great pleasure that I'm here today to participate in this student dialogue within the conference on the future of Europe. This conference, as we have heard, gives European citizens, old and young, and today especially with different professional backgrounds, the opportunity to enter into a dialogue with their government and also to put forward concrete policy proposals, as we have just heard. Germany has organized its own national dialogues, some of them online, some of them on-site within local communities. And our former German Foreign Minister, Heiko Maas, together with his Italian counterpart, has also participated in an online dialogue with German students in Rome, in Italy, and Italian students in an Italian school in Berlin. As recently as on 16 January, our new foreign ministry under the new German foreign minister Annalena Baerbock held another national dialogue with about 100 participants. I would like to thank Minister of Education, Prodromos Prodromou, and the Foreign Ministry for the invitation to participate in this national event here in Cyprus. And a sincere thank you goes to the students who are taking part in shaping Europe's future, as well as their teachers, who accompany and motivate them in this process today and throughout their whole school education. Yesterday, I had a very lively debate with what I would call my Cypriot students, who are here in the first two rows, on the very controversial topic of migration. We looked together at the situation in Germany, in Cyprus, and what the European Union can do in order to find a common approach to this challenge. I personally loved the lively discussion that we had, me and the junior ambassadors, how you call yourselves. And I'm now very curious to listen to your statements and proposals. Thank you very much.
Λοιπόν, θα ακούσουμε τώρα τα
Now we will listen to the conclusions of the group, and I will give the floor immediately to the students. I will give you the names. So, Angelina Panagidi, Maxim Kantarovich, Andreas Xidas, Despina Tsanga, Dimitra Eleninakou, Fanny Simeu, and Angeliki Nicolaou. We will begin with Angelina.
From the Heritage Private School, and we are here today on behalf of the junior ambassadors of Limassol to talk on the topic of migration. The factors affecting migration are categorized as push and pull factors. Push factors drive people out of one country, whereas pull factors entice others in. We call pull factors immigration and push factors emigration. In 2019, Cyprus actually became the country with the highest asylum seeker to population ratio, with 16% of our population now being international immigrants. Only 4.3% only 4.39% received refugee status and 34.31% were granted protection. In regard to emigrants, as of 2016 statistics, in Cyprus, there were 228,000 nationally displaced people as a result of the 1974 occupation by the Turkish army.
Hi. Hi, I'm Maxim, and I'm representing the Heritage Private School. So Turkey has visa-free borders, which makes travel into this country very easily accessible. Not only that, but travel across the sea into the occupied parts of Cyprus is also very easy to do. The North doesn't recognize the government of the Republic of Cyprus, and we all know that the North of Cyprus isn't internationally recognized as a country either. This means that Cyprus is excluded from the EU-Turkey agreement on migrants. This agreement made Cyprus a preferred destination due to our location close to Syria. Right? There has globally been an increase in the number of Syrian refugees following the 2015 migrant crisis, leaving Cyprus open to a very large influx of migrants. Migrants will travel through the visa-free borders, right? And then they cross through the UN-protected Green Line, which is the no man's land between the north and the south side of Cyprus, separating them. And then they're able to access Cyprus by taking routes that are left uncontrolled. As a result, most of Cyprus's international migrants travel through the north.
Therefore, a particularly important aspect that arises is the one of respect of human rights of all migrants. They need to integrate into our local society and also cultivate the notion of no racism amongst the local people. Let us not forget that our parents and grandparents experienced in a violent way in 1974 the migration crisis. They lost their houses, their jobs, their friends. They lost their cities and they started over from point zero. Before, however, trying to integrate immigrants into Cyprus, or any other country for that matter, the blatant issue of illegal ships needs to be addressed. Hundreds of people on refugee ships die every day: children, pregnant women, and elderly. These ships do not have sufficient fuel and capacity to reach land in time, which results in the tragic deaths of these poor people. Sea-Watch, an NGO from Germany that works in the Mediterranean, commissioned ships to rescue refugees. We believe similar organizations ought to be erected and receive support from the European Union to stop the needless maritime manslaughter happening right in front of us. Cyprus itself has a geopolitical location suitable for the base of such organizations, being in the middle of the Mediterranean and closer to conflict countries more than any other member state. We, as Cypriots and as Europeans, have experienced the migration crisis up close and can be a deciding factor in the battle of the previously stated NGOs. Allow us to mention a quote of Elie Wiesel, a Romanian-American writer, a political activist, and a Holocaust survivor. Human beings can be beautiful or more beautiful. They can be fat or skinny. They can be right or wrong. But illegal? How can a human being be illegal?
The benefits that the EU can derive from the integration of migrants into the European societies can vary. For instance, the host countries will gain a eligible workforce, multicultural communities will be developed, and social cohesion will prevail as a consequence of less emerging problems by migrants who are not yet well settled in the society. A key factor to achieve successful integration is education. As suggested in the common framework for the integration of non-EU nationals, there should exist a more coherent and single EU approach to integration regarding education. This system should set the basis for a common approach towards children with migration biography in order to offer them equal educational opportunities.
The main characteristics of the system should be, firstly, the assessment of the academical level of each child upon its arrival, in order to place them in specific reception classes based on their level, which will provide them with the necessary language education and the required knowledge to eventually enter the mainstream education. In addition, there should be mental health care and social integration support provided by specialists. To ensure the migrant students' stability, support should continue to be provided also after their entry into the mainstream education. Moreover, native students should learn to embrace diversity and appreciate different cultures so that they can be future members of the multicultural societies. To accomplish that, language learning from a young age should be emphasized in the school curriculum. Furthermore, subjects like history and geography should give an objective insight about different cultures.
Ως δόκιμοι πρέσβεις του Ευρωπαϊκού Κοινοβουλίου, θα θέλαμε να τονίσουμε πως μας λυπεί και μας απογοητεύει ιδιαίτερα το γεγονός ότι η μεταναστευτική κρίση εργαλειοποιείται για πολιτικούς σκοπούς και γίνεται αιτία έντασης μεταξύ των κρατών, όπως έγινε τον Νοέμβριο στα σύνορα Λευκορωσίας-Πολωνίας, όπως έγινε τον Φεβρουάριο του 2020 στον Εύρο και όλοι προβληματιστήκαμε για το ρόλο της Τουρκίας στην παράτυπη μετανάστευση στην Κύπρο.
Η μετανάστευση αποτελεί ένα διαχρονικό φαινόμενο το οποίο καταλαγιάζει όταν ο τυφώνας που το δημιουργεί ηρεμεί. Πόλεμος, πείνα...
Migration constitutes a phenomenon which is, war, famine, violation of human rights. Here it is where we have this challenge. You have to take this opportunity to look at the problems of migration and to find solutions to these. Let us give the opportunity to get to know people and traditions. Let's give the opportunity to people to learn our own language, our own culture. Let us fight with them for peace and human rights. So this course is long, but not only impossible if the member states of the EU remain faithful to the values on which the EU is constructed, and it's not impossible if, Honourable Minister of Culture, all the students in our schools, and not only those who are involved in European programs, to get to know the functioning of the EU, institutional bodies, and challenges. And the answer of Idibus was human being. And this is our reply to the migration issue. Thank you very much.
Λοιπόν, στο σημείο αυτό...
Now, at this point, we will proceed to the dialogue, and I hope constructive dialogue. And this is a very, huge challenge for Europe. That this is a topic which managed to divide us. If we call the differences divergent opinions within the EU. And this is a topic which is, of course, sent to us in Cyprus, given the large migration waves, and it is difficult to tackle this problem without the solidarity from the European Union. Now, do you have any questions? Or maybe from one of the panelists would like to take the floor? And food for thought, concerns expressed. So we give you the floor. So questions. Name, please, microphone. Your microphone on. Try now. The technician, please. Yes. Go on. Medat Hasivulu from Agros Lyceum, and my question is as follows. How the Cyprus educational problem could integrate the children of migrants in such a way as they would really benefit from our education system? We believe that they do not have equal opportunities of access to education, to the higher education, let's say the high schools or primary schools. Minister, of course, this question of integration, we have to see it, regarding the size of Cyprus, or the population of Cyprus, and the number of migrants, and what are the possibilities of the government of Cyprus. Yes, this from the initial, let's say, stance of the pupils and the students, and I have to say, as this was presented by the pupils, indeed it was a complete, let's say, approach from all its aspects of this very difficult topic. So it is something that we know that Europe is facing this challenge, not only Cyprus, but mainly Europe more than other countries in the world. But however, human beings, the migration rather, it is not today's phenomenon. Migrants, either because they are uprooted by wars, or distractions, or political also, uprootings, or because of financial need. and unbearable financial need. So what Europe is facing today is the result of destabilization of many countries because of armed conflicts, and I would say the specificity, the particularity here in Cyprus is, as it was very nicely analyzed before, it is that we do not have the same wave of migrants that other EU or other countries of the Mediterranean basin have, which are from migrants from armed conflict or migrants, illegal migrants. So unfortunately, we have this wave from the areas which are not controlled by the Republic of Cyprus. Of course, we have to have this humane approach. We have to have solidarity. You have to express solidarity. And of course, Cyprus and the Cypriot society historically is, of course, a space or an area which has understanding despite the difficult relations that we have. And 2 generations back, we were a people which migrated, and our Cypriots, they became migrants. And also after 1974, they were uprooted by force from their homes. But in order to have this humane understanding, this depends, of course, to the material facts. That is to say, what is the ability not only of the government, of the state, but also of the society, not only to host these migrants, but as you said, to create conditions in order for these new citizens to live on equal footing, and also to integrate schools. Yes, all pupils, they go to schools. However, we've observed that after a number of years, and here you gave some statistical data, it is a coincidence, it is not necessarily that this 16% you have identified here, it is more or less the population that you have in primary education in Cyprus. That is to say, it's a full equal number, 60%. And what is happening already is that we are offering special language lessons, but not only, but also for getting awareness, cultural awareness and so on. And this year and last year, we've ascertained that our educational system is not as effective as it should be. And already from this year on, we are promoting an educational reform. And as you said, with the arrival of students, of course, they do come to our schools and they're accepted to our schools. But of course, the issue is not just for this, children to be just present. It was a huge problem for them just to be present, at school, and of course, without having the necessary background. But that is why we wanted to integrate these pupils, and of course, first of all, with the learning of Greek language. And I have to tell you that we've organized special lessons for students of, or pupils of migration background. Over half of this, they didn't reach, the level B1, let's say, which is necessary in order to get enrolled in our schools. And from the next year, we are going to implement it. You have implemented it partly to lyceums, and that this is going to be a necessary precondition, that in order for these students to be enrolled, they should learn the Greek language, first of all. And we organize more effectively other, schools or school classes, and with such a population of children who did not know the language, our educational system was not prepared to have, enough teachers, let's say. It has not sufficed for somebody to be a Greek teacher or a philologist, but we're talking about the teaching of Greek language as a second language. So we need educators. So you're right, we have to focus on the participation. I wouldn't say integration, because sometimes there's a misunderstanding with that, but I agree that we should give the opportunity to these children to participate, to equally benefit from our system, because they are here with us. And this is one of the challenges, and it is one of the wedge, of schools, because I said that we are going to also adjust our curriculum. Yes, Ambassador?
I think that the Minister is making a very important point here, the importance of learning the language. I would agree that once we discussed about the asylum procedure and whether we have to see whether they have a right to stay here because they were politically persecuted. But once it has been established that somebody has a right to stay because he is politically persecuted, then the question of integration is the paramount question into the society. And there, as the Minister says, learning the language is of utmost importance, and we see that in Germany, of course, as well. And yes, the schools have an important role, but I think, and we discussed that yesterday, that also the society, like every student, there can be tandems, there can be families who foster or adopt a family to help them go to the offices and fill in forms and take care. It may be the churches who will have a role in that process. But to learn the language and to be able then later to have an education and find a job, I think, as the Minister says, it is crucial. And in Germany, I see some very nice examples how quickly these often very intelligent, many Syrians also in Germany, how quickly they learn the language and are able to become a member of the society. Thank you.
In brief, I would like to say that the migration is a very complicated issue, and there is no politician who is going to tell you are going to solve this problem. They are lying if they say so. And this is something which divided Europe. And this divided Europe because not all European countries, you have to realize that, because in the EU we are tackling the problems better if we are, if you are have the same problem, let's say, for example, all the 27 countries, but this problem of migration was a problem only with the Mediterranean, let's say, Greece, Spain, Cyprus, Portugal, Malta, Italy, France. So today, when I come as a migrant, from Syria, close to the Polish borders, yes, the other countries realize that there is this migration crisis, and I believe, and we have here the ambassador of France, and I'm certain and optimistic that the French presidency has put as its goal to make progress vis-à-vis the proposal tabled by the European Commission for an integrated asylum system, and also for tackling the migration problem. But however, as you know, it's a capacity problem. Europe cannot receive all the Africans in Europe, for example. This is impossible. So there should be, respect of international law, and we are committed in the EU to respond, and the European Parliament underlined already that we should invest in these young people. If they do not have something to do in their own countries, of course they would flee their own countries. And I would like to put forward another dimension. For example, the climate refugees, because all studies, they do demonstrate that not only migration will not stop, and and I wish, of course, that armed conflicts and so on and wars will end in the Mediterranean, but these flows will be intensified because of the climate change. Nobody can live with 60 degrees, living in Africa. You have to think about it, you have to be prepared to have the necessary preconditions, DUI, in the EU, as it is the legal term in the Treaty of the EU to tackle this problem as best as we can. And there are questions from the group, the group which studied this topic of migration, but of course I open the floor to all of you. You are here present, and this is a topic very close to you because it is a daily, problem, and on the mass media as well. This is your future, this is your tomorrow, and they are here, the members of the panel, they are here to listen to your concerns, and from their replies you will draw your own conclusions, and we will put them on the conference platform. The migration is a huge problem. It is divided, and as Mr. Gutti said, the climate migration, and this is underlined by the scientists, and more so. And these are problems which are going to face in the future as well. You have the floor. Give them mic, please.
Για να έχουμε τη δυνατότητα να σε ακούμε όλοι.
If you use the microphone, please. Yannis Avxendiou from Paralimni Lyceum. As I hear the different announcements and promptings by the EU over time for solidarity and so forth, for European solidarity, I wonder, why have we not yet put new ideas on the table for dealing with the migration crisis, and why are we still working on views from the previous decade? Today, we see new suggestions, for example, giving a new European identity. It will be a European identity which will be given to persons of migrant background, and they will be the first purely European, let's say, citizens, and then start their integration. My question is, and I realize that a lot of good work is being done, and here we are discussing without fear about solidarity for migrants. This used to be a taboo some decades ago. So my question is, when will this really come to the table for actual measures? I think you should upload that on the platform for the conference, because the issue of the European citizenship is not there yet. We all have a dual citizenship, our national and European, but we don't have passports or IDs, EU passport, EU ID exclusively. They need a member state ID. That would get them the European ID, unless you're talking about a completely new identity card. And who is competent to discuss that? The Commission. We will go to the third unit. Microphone, please. We cannot hear.
Reached. Are there any plans?
Ήδη σε κάποιες των χωρών της Ένωσης αυτό το σημείο έχει...
Well, I think we have reached that point. The Cyprus authorities say we can't take any more, the capacity. Greece also, Malta also. That is why solidarity is important. You know, it's important to call things by the real name. In the EU, we see the following. The leaders of the member states go there, and decisions are taken by concession, and they and decisions are taken by consensus according to the realities of the country. But when they go back to their countries, they say other things. And we've had member states refusing to participate in the decisions taken by consensus. And when they went back to their countries, they refused to implement them. And they refused to receive migrants with the argument that that would alter the character of the country. I think that's ridiculous. How can the character or the Christian character of a country change if you accept a limited number? If any country does not want to receive migrants, pay the bill. Pay the bill for these migrants being sent to another member state that is ready to receive them. That's why I said solidarity is very important. So if decisions are given collectively, why is there the option of rejecting them? Well, because 27 countries sit there and they have to reach a consensus, a compromise. And the proposal for the new Solidarity Pact is there. There is provision in the treaties on the subject of capacity. If a country says, I just cannot take any more, then measures will be taken to limit visas for asylum seekers and so on. There is a safety valve there. Well, I'm not the Minister of Interior, but I can say about Cyprus that the decisions of the Council are one thing, and the endless discussions from noon to 4 a.m. the next day, I have experience in that, in order to reach not exactly a decision, but a common platform. And these are the disadvantages of the great advantage of taking decisions all together. If they were to decide with a weighted vote, then that would be even worse. We have the tendency as a society in Cyprus to be humane and to welcome people. I didn't use the word capacity that Mr. Gittiz used, but yes, certainly there comes a saturation point where the capacity and the abilities of the state are exhausted. They reach their limits. And I'm not talking about the golden mean and the percentages, but if suddenly we need more schools, how are we going to get around that? And you can't solve that legally, because when the vast majority of people who come don't come by boats, they come to the north by airplane and they cross into the south. You have it in your proposals that this can be sometimes used as a type of hybrid war pressure by some states. That's part of the attack that Cyprus is under at the moment. And these people come and here they are. What do? We are grateful because we do have some support from the EU, and countries such as Germany and France at various times have helped Cyprus. But our problem after a certain point is no longer just economic. It's not a matter of money. Yes, we do need the infrastructure and that cost and so forth, but it's not always a question of money because the inflow is constant and continuous. So that creates many issues. The migration issue is a challenge for the entire EU because the southern member states, of course, may be neighboring countries to countries of origin, but with the climate change, that might change. But other countries like Germany has volunteered to help accept about 1 million refugees, if I'm not mistaken. The thing is, the measures that we take and the reception classes that we have in schools and our programs. Let's give the floor to the ambassador of Germany.
What Myrto and the minister are saying, I think we acknowledge, of course, that there is a big challenge in Cyprus, in Greece, Italy, Spain, but especially here in Cyprus. And I welcome that that Cyprus is a member of the European Union, where we can discuss and find a collective approach to this challenge. And we have been talking about burden sharing and how difficult it is to find other countries who are within the European Union to share the burden. But because we recognize the problems and challenges of the countries of so-called first entrance, Germany, for example, together with other countries, are prepared to go forward and to make proposals to take more people in order to show solidarity. So we have anonymity within European Union. We have this big ongoing discussion on whether the Dublin procedures should prevail or whether we have the so-called burden sharing. But we will find a solution within the EU to approach the problem, and that is through solidarity. If it is not on an EU level, also bilaterally. Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Είναι ένα θέμα το οποίο δεν κλείνει. Μακάρι να έκλεινε τόσο...
Thank you for that. That's a huge subject. But we will put a semicolon here because we can't put a full stop. It's a long subject. We will be waiting to see the conclusions, and we will wait for the spring of 2022 to see the conclusion from the other countries and so forth. And as Mr. Gettys said, there seems to be sometimes difference of opinion depending on who is facing what problem. Now we go to a small video. I want to see us have a common vision for what kind of education we want to prepare our children for the future that is here already. I would like the EU to safeguard my rights as a woman. I think more communication and transparency in among politicians. I think the EU should pressure member states to use renewable sources of energy. I would like to see policies encouraging cooperation in technology and industry, more support for art and culture, full digital reform, more opportunities, stop the destruction of biodiversity, cross-border cooperation and protection of the Mediterranean, more opportunities for employment and training, incentives to increase the birth rate. I envision a Europe with a secure network of infrastructure. The future of Europe will happen with or without us. The dialogue and the conference for the future of Europe is a structured, excellent way for citizens to participate. I'd rather be part of the discussion and not just the audience or a viewer. So you here are not just spectators, you are involved in this discussion, and this is a great opportunity given by this conference. The third thematic unit is the role of the EU in the world, and here we had the Lyceums of Aradipu, Agios Georgios, Paralymni, Lefkara, Technical School of Larnaca, and together, and with them, the ambassador of the Netherlands, Mrs. Merks Schaapveld.
Dear teachers and dear students, and particularly Group C, of course, because we had an excellent session yesterday. It's a pleasure to be part of this student dialogue event, contributing to the Conference of the Future of Europe. And I think yesterday and today's event highlights the importance of this dialogue. A dialogue where Cypriot students, new generation of the island, can express their views on the role which the EU should play in the future, while residing on the southeasternmost frontier of Europe. And I would like to thank them really for their preparation and their active participation in the dialogue yesterday, sharing their hopes, fears, and expectations when it comes to the role of the European Union in the world. Now, talking to approximately 15 students from 5 different schools, which are based in the Larnaca and Famagusta districts, and putting to them actual current challenges, such as the crisis in the Ukraine, the tensions between an EU member state and China, the coup d'etat in Burkina Faso, and closer to their hearts, the Cyprus issue, it became evident that they placed their attention on the common values which the EU member states share. They especially underlined the issue of safekeeping human rights, projecting solidarity on humanitarian issues both within the EU and abroad, and safeguarding peace and stability. Focusing on the role of the EU in the world, they actually shared many similar views with their peers in the Netherlands on the role of the EU as a stabilizing factor for peace. Now, as my colleagues mentioned, also in the Netherlands, there have been quite some sessions done with students, universities, schools, local communities, and all of that information is being gathered and being processed to be fed into the process. Yesterday, there was a strong feeling expressed that the EU's strength could be directed in collectively approaching international challenges, such as climate change and the pandemic. Topics we could only touch on briefly yesterday, but will hopefully be part of the discussions and the questions today. Overall, the Cypriot students focused especially on the need for increasing security, for protecting the EU territory from outside threats, including the creation of an European army. But they also highlighted the need for investing more on educational systems and on future innovation, as well as assisting less privileged countries where it is needed through humanitarian aid. I really enjoyed our discussions yesterday, and I look forward to your takeaways and the proposals that you would like to make, what you could do as Cypriot youth to enhance the role of the EU in the world. Thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε. Σας ευχαριστούμε.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I take a few seconds sometimes before I speak because I take directions from the technicians there. And here we have Kleanthi Ptochou and Andrea Pizzilidou. Good morning. I am Kleanthi Ptochou and this is Andrea Pizzilidou. We are members of Group C from the Lykio of Lefkara, Aradipu, Agios Georgios, Paralimni, and the Larnaca Technical School. Our subject is the role of the EU in the world. And we work together with the ambassador of the Netherlands, Mrs. Elke Paula Mertz. In the online meeting that we had with the ambassador posed the question, what is the EU for you? And addressed this question to all the students who gave their own responses. And here's some of them. The EU is the multicultural family, which gives them a sense of security. It gives opportunities for further education and professional careers. It also the possibility through interaction and solidarity, tolerance, and its multiculturalism to fight racism, xenophobia, intolerance, and nationalism. Also, it is a coalition of peace and must play an important role in European and global peace. And also, it is based on the values of democracy, equality, coexistence, that it has to safeguard in this changing global environment. Now, as far as the role of the EU in the world, the ambassador posed some questions for the role of the EU and its position on the Russia-Ukraine issue, on the coup d'etat in Burkina Faso, on a possibility of a war between Ireland and the UK, and also the sanctions that China wants to impose on Lithuania. These are issues that one needs to be informed about. The view given was that the role of the EU has to be like a mediator and a supporter of real cooperation and peace, not only of its member states, but of the entire world. The next question was, where should the EU invest more? The options would be trade, good neighborly relations, security and defense, humanitarian aid, development aid. We agreed that everything is important, so emphasis was given on defense because 38% of our country is under Turkish invasion, whereas for the entire Europe, there were suggestions about a defense army for safeguarding the EU and its borders. We think the EU has a multilateral and multi-level role to play that is not limited to securing peace within its borders. Finally, the other question was how young people can contribute for an upgraded role of the EU in the world. And we have some suggestions for that to present to you. Thank you. The children here are giving priority to these great issues of security, of defense, and also our own problem here, that of occupation. the European presidency right now, France, has as its priority to highlight these issues. A role of a stabilizer, a mediator of peace, safety, security. Mr. Gittis, your response. You start with me because we have a history on that. With Mrs. Canari, we did a conference on some of these issues. Yes, indeed, I was in Strasbourg a few weeks ago when President Macron presented the priorities of the presidency, and out of those I point out the strategic autonomy of the EU. In other words, that we in the EU should be able alone, without being dependent on third countries, and when we say third countries, we mean primarily the US, which after the Second World War was the security provider for Europe and what is today the EU. But the United States seem reluctant to continue to provide this security to European states. So the French presidency and the parliament, with a big majority in recent years, supports this idea of strategic autonomy and building a common European defense. If you see all the measurements of the Eurobarometer in relation to what Cypriot citizens want, we have a majority again here that most Cypriot citizens, and you, the students, taking into account the occupation conditions that exist in Cyprus, consider it useful for this possibility to exist, to build EU defense so that the EU can defend the integrity and of its member states. We're very far from this goal. This is discussed widely. You should promote it as one of the conclusions of this dialogue, in my opinion. Many other citizens have submitted similar requests. And apart from the conclusions that you will submit as a group, as a team, I might suggest that you can, as individually, submit things on the platform. There is that possibility, and also invite your friends to do the same. So the more ideas we get on there, the better. So defense is a very topical issue, very crucial issue. Mrs. Zambarta.
I would like to explain what you mean defense and autonomy, defense autonomy, because this is one of the topics which was presented as by President von der Leyen as a strategic topic in September. So we're not talking about defense. You're not talking about contractual, conflicts or defense for military. You're talking about hybrid aggressions, cybercrime, cyberspace. You're talking about their ability to defend or be protected from hackers, or security of our elections. And you're talking also about autonomy. That is to say, to be able and be dependent with regard to materials for, our technology. We're talking about semiconductors, or about the so-called rare material, and they are, the main provider, but China, is the main provider, but it cannot only depend on a third country about our immediate needs. Therefore, the topic of defense is a larger, a wider, spectrum, let's say, whether we should or not create a European army, and this is a huge, effort because you have to change the treaties and so on and so forth, but many steps should be taken now in order for our defense to be there. And this, of course, does not mean armaments, or defense, material. It doesn't mean that you are in favor of wars, but you're talking about common defense. We are talking about defense. I repeat, and we should not forget either that defense is safeguarded in the EU via the NATO, and members of NATO is the majority of EU member states. Therefore, the European Union is not par excellence, the role of EU par excellence is not to be a defense agreement. Mr. Prodromou, very briefly, it is something which, we are all looking for, that is to say, the common foreign policy of the EU, or to some extent foreign policy, not only as a power, but also with regard to the values that the EU represents, in order for these values prevail at the universal level. And even more difficult is a common defense. It is an open discussion. However, I have to note that from the point of view of Cyprus, as a very small country in size, which for almost half a century has occupied territories from a country which officially has begun discussions for accession country, and in 2004 we had the expectation that the member state, or being member states rather of the EU, this would help Cyprus to demand for its freedom. Therefore, there is always an experience, or there's also the effort to safeguard this common defense, or if you want, a reaction, of course. You said that the EU is not a power, a war, let's say, power, but if the EU has an impact on the world, are the values and principles which are represented or enshrined by the EU, and those who believed in the values and principles of united Europe and of the European culture, and those who were expecting that Cyprus's accession to the EU would give Cyprus more security. But to be honest, yes, Europe has won, decades ago, from the fact that Europe prior to the EU was a space, of many wars, conflicts, and we should not undermine this, but we do not say this enough, because all these peoples, the European Union has become not only a space of peace, but of close cooperation. And we should invest in this direction, because this is united Europe, and of course we have to place higher objectives and goals, and hope that a number of things that might have been gained by some countries in Europe, however, this should become common goals, and therefore the course of history is not a direct line, let's say. In order to have progress, we have to embrace young ideas from you, the youth of the EU. Yes, you have the floor.
We didn't discuss yesterday the EU-NATO relationship, so it was really from a perspective of EU in the world. I really got the sense from you that the belonging to the bigger family of the EU gave you a shared values and security feeling, which needed to be protected from counter threats from outside. And in that context, we had this discussion as well on an army, or a European army. But I'm sure there's some more questions also forward-looking on what you would like to propose.
Λοιπόν, αν δεν υπάρχουν...
So, if there aren't any questions, please, I would like to give the floor to the head of the European Office in Cyprus, Mr. Getis, to address his messages. And we have concluded, we have important conclusions, and then I will give the floor 10 minutes to close, or questions or replies. But now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Getis. First of all, Honorable Minister of Education, dear colleague, head of the European Commission, ambassadors, I would like to thank the three, groups of schools, and this constitution has also your support, and this is being organized for the 6th time in Cyprus, not only Cyprus, but at the European level, pan-European level, but it is a successful institution, but generally, and for us, the EU. The European Parliament, this was underlined from the beginning, that it is, behind the idea of the direct participation of citizens, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is the first time that the EU creates these conferences in the past, but it is the first time that each citizen, each one of you, you can participate and put down your ideas. And the opinions heard today are important, and they will be written down. They will be sent to the digital platform, and maybe you would wonder how these ideas of you would be utilized or would be promoted, let's say, to the conference at the end of spring. And I would like to say that with the help of this multilingual platform, similar ideas as the one expressed today by you, and using artificial intelligence, and it is the first platform at the pan-European level which we are using in the EU, where the artificial intelligence plays this very important role, will be grouped. So, Kyriaki, from the beginning, she spoke about the proposal to have a European, let's say, lesson for the European citizenship, for the values and principles of you, in order to cultivate these, and not for you to become the ambassadors of these values and principles. And this idea, which has already been put, on the platform, and thanks to the artificial intelligence, and this is registered by the Secretariat, which is supporting the Conference of the Future of Europe. So all these ideas will be listened to. Now, which of these ideas will be implemented is another issue, because at the end of the conference, the members of the European Parliament, 108 MEPs, representatives from national MEPs, 2 per state, representatives of the local government, social partners, trade unions, so on and so forth, all the above make up the conference.
Μια έκθεση με τα συμπεράσματα.
And this make up the plenary of the Conference of the Future of Europe, so around the end of the summer, and then this will be discussed by the member states, by the European Council, that is to say. So in closing, I would like to thank warmly the co-organizers of this beautiful event, the Ministry of Culture, Education, Culture, Sport and Youth, the head of the European Commission, and also would like to thank warmly the PIO, the Public Information Office, and all the technicians who were here and supported this beautiful, conference, and of course Mrs. Canari, who coordinated, and also the ambassadors of France, Germany, and the Netherlands. And thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ, κύριε.
I would like to thank Mr. Getis. It is important to know the process which will be followed and what will happen at the end with all these proposals. And you please allow me to say that amongst the 108 MEPs, we have 2 Cypriots participating. It was an omission because I'm the competent, so we have 2 Cypriot MEPs. It's very important for Cyprus because out of 108, 2 are Cypriots, Eleftheris Christoforou from DC, the European Popular Party, and Mavridis from the group of Socio-Democrats, and they participate as full members. And I would advise you to propose to them directly, and I'm certain that they will transmit them to the plenary. So we have 5 minutes left. So I will begin with students who haven't taken the floor before. If you please could be brief.
Forum Private School, and I'd like to make a question combining 2 of the subjects we've mentioned today. We've talked about the pandemic and also migration. We've talked about enabling immigrants to be able to adapt to their new home and becoming a new member of their society. But is the EU able to protect the many immigrants from the pandemic during the hard times we're passing right now? Or should the EU maybe give them more fundings or make new regulations for the immigrants in order to protect them from the pandemic?
Ναι. Λοιπόν, θα θέλατε να απαντήσετε.
So who would like to reply to this? I mean, migrants, I mean, at least in our country, they are covered by the NHS of Cyprus, the National Health System, as everybody else, the European Union. I mean, as a European Union, it is not provided for to take such a role. But please note how important it was during all this time of the pandemic to have directions from the European Centre for infections. And so this European organization gave us, let's say, more or less the same approaches because it was, I mean, the pandemic was unprecedented. So topics of health issues are issues which are managed by the member states. So if, for example, for the future, for tomorrow, and for your course or your children, because you will also decide on behalf of your children, you are maybe asking more competencies from Europe on health issues. So the digital platform is there to present your. Yes, so a common health system will be easier than a common defense. It's easier, so the common health system. So the European Union has managed during the pandemic to negotiate for the vaccines on behalf of the 27 member states, and of course reinforced the negotiation strength of Europe vis-à-vis the vaccines, and we have donated and we've used, we funded vaccines which we used. For the member states, we are not necessarily speak about migrants who should benefit from health systems, but we did our best in order to have vaccines for third countries, because if the pandemic is not solved, worldwide, we won't find a solution at the European level. I was informed that, please, all those who took the floor already, please respect the others. Here, I'm trying to choose. I'm sorry, but those who have not yet taken the floor. So maybe one question. This question, another one.
To answer this last question. My name is Melina Bekiai, representing Forum Private School. It has been mentioned that negotiations regarding the minimum wage in Cyprus have already begun. So I'm aware that it might be a bit too early to ask, but could you provide me with a brief summary of the criteria used to shape these negotiations?
Mm-hmm. In Cyprus or in the EU? It is in Kipro, in a thema...
In Cyprus, I think it is tabled before the House of Representatives, I believe, by the Minister of Labour in the European Union. And I can send you, if you want, the explanatory notes. So in the EU, we want to have a standard of living which is a dignified standard of living. This is about, Europe. So the standard of living, or what does it mean, a dignified living? Of course, because the cost of living is different from one country to the other. But in Cyprus, this is a proposal tabled, or it is a proposal by the government of Cyprus. And in the past, we used to say that, then, if we came out of the crisis then, in 2013, the dialogue was going to begin. So the position of the government was that if we reduced the unemployment rate, we would begin, discussing the minimum wage. And this has begun, I think, very recently. The government, the Minister of Labour and Social Insurance, they began consultations, not negotiations, consultations. And of course, all the social partners participate, and possibly these will be tabled before the government and enacted by the government. This has taken the course of implementation because of I believe that at the European level would be more demanding, let's say, more difficult to have a common denominator. Yes, this is something which has begun already. The last question, please. Microphone, please. Your mic is off. Your mic, please. Yoris Konstantinou from the Paralimni Lyceum. I would like to ask, how are we promoting the transfer to a green economy if youth is not informed through a lesson of conscience and environmental conscience? Mr. Prodromou, in schools we do have an issue on awareness or awareness on sustainable development. And in Cyprus, the Ministry of Education, we do have centers for environmental education. I think we have 9 all over Cyprus, and they are also specified as, let's say, model schools or model centers. So maybe because of the pandemic, because, for example, the visit to the Center of Environmental Conscience or Awareness have stopped their operation, their functioning because of the pandemic. But when I said before that there is a process for reviewing and updating the curriculum, inter alia, something which is also done in Greece, and we are in collaboration with Greece, is the introduction of skills workshops. So these skills workshops, and they will begin from the primary education and then the gymnasium. This is the first 3 years, in high school in Cyprus. So we take into account very specifically the 4 priorities of the European strategy for 2030. One of those priorities of the EU is indeed environmental education, education for sustainability, for cyclic economy. So the other one, which has to do with these suggestions, has to do with citizenship and critical thinking, has to do also with European values. It does not mean one specific just lesson, because they're talking about skills workshops, which will begin as of the age of 5 until the end of the gymnasium. This is something we are examining now, but you are right in saying that we have to focus on environmental education. And I need to add that as a Minister of Education, I do see, programs which are developed by schools, either with NGOs or with other organizations. And please keep in mind that towards the end of this year, that is to say in October, we are going to host in Cyprus the ministerial conference. Over 100 ministers an organization of the United Nations, as to say the Commission for the Economic Development in Europe of the UN, and this was going to be organized by Cyprus because Cyprus is at the presidency of such a committee in the UN on education in environmental issues. So I believe that yes, I mean, we can pay more attention to this topic, but I have to say again that there are many actions in schools. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when you used to be at the primary school or first classes, I mean, of the high school, this was not existing there then. But anyway, every year, I mean, we focus on this. Yes, of course, this is a topic you should, I mean, on which you should exert pressure, I mean, towards the decision-making centers, because climate change is going faster and not to our interest as compared to bureaucratic, please allow me to use this term, bureaucratic, let's say, conditions which manage sometimes the wishes, I mean, of an organization. Even if we wanted to make rapid decisions, it's not always feasible. So I want to say that we do have European funds, and we always, I mean, we already, I'm sorry, have plans to build schools with the biodiversity and bioclimate, I mean, buildings, and this will continue. And we have over one program for upgrading school buildings, and in accordance with environment models, and of course also the content of the education. As I say, we have to include, and also climate change, and your generation will experience climate crisis. Mr. Ketis gave you all the information on how you can submit your proposals in order for this to be discussed and then to come to a better outcome for a common European future. Dear students, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank your teachers as well for their important contribution to this conference, for the excellent organization of this conference, the Office of the European Parliament, the Office of the European Commission, representation in Cyprus, and special thanks to the Public Information Office for the excellent organization of this conference and the YouTube broadcasting. And a warm thanks also to the ambassadors of France, the Netherlands, and Germany for their precious contribution and support. Thank you all warmly for being with us today, with your presence and also online, and with a great anxiousness. We are going to expect the results of this student dialogue event. Thank you.
Όλοι να παραμείνετε, σας παρακαλώ, όλοι στις θέσεις σας για να φύγουμε όλοι με τάξη, να αναχωρήσει